Merlin Sports.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is Merlin Sports, and I'm Fenomena, and I'm here again with DDawg.
What's going on, man? Great week, and hoping for some more great football this week. Very interesting matchups. The regular, old reliable Kansas City and San Francisco in the NFC, but some new teams coming down and playing for chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, very excited indeed. So we're down to the semifinals and what better known as the conference championships. So let's look at our two matchups. Let's start in the AFC because that's the first game up this week. So in the AFC, we have the Kansas City Chiefs taken to the road to visit Baltimore, play the Ravens, and that's at 3 o'clock Eastern on Sunday. And Baltimore is a 3.5 point favorite currently. So, what are your thoughts on that game, and like how do you think the road was for these teams to get here?
Well, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, the Chiefs, since Mahomes has been there, they've pretty much owned the AFC. They haven't. I think the only time they haven't won since Mahomes has been there is against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So that's going to be interesting. This is Lamar Jackson's first trip to the conference championship here as well. So really two of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is a standard, but Lamar Jackson, once they get there, I see a really balanced Baltimore team versus a strong defensive team in Kansas City, but they've got some injuries on that defensive side of the football. So it's going to be interesting that way in terms of how their defense matches up. They did a great job last week against Buffalo. I know a lot of people were saying how well Buffalo outplayed Kansas City, but Kansas City was very much in that game, and it wasn't like it was one-sided. Yeah, there were some mistakes, but teams make mistakes, and people forget the fumble on the goal line by Nico Hardman. Really kept Buffalo in the game after I think the coach made a bonehead call to go for it, fake the punt deep in his own territory. But Baltimore's a different beast. They have a really well-rounded team, and their defense is strong. Mike McDonald has rebuilt that defense back to the years of Ray Lewis, Ed Reed type of defense. They're hard-nosed, tough. And then offensively, Baltimore is dynamic because they have one of the most dynamic quarterbacks in the league in Lamar Jackson. And Kansas City is just it's experience. I like Baltimore in this game, though. I think Baltimore finds a way to win this. John Harbaugh is probably inspired by his brother Jim winning a national championship at Michigan. So he wants to get his second Super Bowl. They haven't been here in the past, but they're relatively pretty healthy versus Kansas City's got a little bit of injuries. And offensively, they haven't been as good as before. They're going to face tough sledding. Well, there's not going to be a fact in this game because both teams come from, Kansas City can come from bad weather, so they can play in bad weather. I don't think it's going to matter. I think it's going to be a tough physical battle. It won't be high scoring. I'm probably going to say 24-20, maybe 20-17. I'd be surprised if it's any higher than that. Just because I think you have two really good defenses that will keep the offenses in check. And neither team's off. Baltimore's more explosive than they are, but they're a grind them out team, right? They're literally a grind them out team. So I like Kansas City. Yeah, not Kansas City. Baltimore in a close game over Kansas City. Obviously, Kansas City is the favorite, but I like Baltimore to surprise them and pull out a victory. They're home. They're comfortable.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, Baltimore's the favorite, the betting favorite in this one because they're at home, and they are the number one seed. But recent experience. Kansas City has the experience and the Super Bowls most recently, especially since Mahomes has taken the helm. And we saw a good performance, a good road performance by Mahomes and the Chiefs last week, going into Buffalo. They gutted it out, and in the end, they were able to sustain and pull out a victory. Pacheco was huge in that game. Like he's like a bowling ball, just a straight downhill runner. Very hard to stop once he gets going. We'll see how he can run against Baltimore, but Baltimore's defense is pretty solid, and it's going to be a challenge for Pacheco to have the same success that he did against Buffalo. Buffalo's defense was a little banged up, so Kansas City was able to take advantage. But I think Baltimore is just a different type of team. Baltimore also, I think that they kind of had their scare last week because they were tied with Houston at halftime, and Houston was right in there. And it was almost like, oh no, because a couple years ago when Baltimore was one of the top seeds in the AFC, and they lost at home to Tennessee, and that's that's why there's so many questions about Lamar Jackson's playoff record. So to be able to pull that one out, and actually they just blew apart Houston in the second half. They just pulled ahead. They scored 24 unanswered points to make it a rout. But there was a time there where Houston, it was a game, and very much in doubt. But Baltimore just pulled it out. I like Baltimore in this one as well. I mean, some of the reasons I just mentioned and some of the reasons you mentioned, I think the difference that Kansas City is going to see between playing Buffalo and Baltimore is just Baltimore's just got that more of that polish. Like you're not going to see. You already said that Buffalo went for that fake punt, and to the coach's defense, I think they saw 10 men on the field and they took a risk to take advantage of it. But I think Harbaugh is like you get a more disciplined coach in his decision making and strategy, and I don't think you're going to see those kind of risky plays like that. And Baltimore's just got more polish, more well-rounded, and I think that they pull it out. I do see a close game as well. I say that it will be under a touchdown because it still is Kansas City that we're talking about, and Andy Reid and Mahomes and Kelsey and Pacheco. They are formidable combination and of players and also experience, and on defense too, right? I think Kansas City hasn't gotten enough credit for how good defensively they've been this year, because usually when we talk Kansas City, we talk Mahomes and the offense, but they're a solid, well-rounded team as well. It's just Baltimore is better overall, and I think it's going to show at home. And also because they got the scare out of the way last week against Houston. So I'm back in Baltimore in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things that I didn't point out that we should. Is that was Mahomes' first road victory in the playoffs. He had never played on the road before in the playoffs, so that was big. But I 100% agree with you. Like Baltimore's a team. They know how to win. They've won it, and they know how to win. They've been there. Whereas Buffalo they always find ways to lose games in the playoffs. Right? It's just in the DNA, and I think this Baltimore team is focused on getting back to winning a championship. So,
yeah.
What do you got? How about the NFC? I mean, let's move the NFC.
Yeah, I mean, this one I think is a little bit harder to predict. We have Detroit Lions, the upstart Detroit Lions, taking on San Francisco. At time is 6:30 Eastern time. San Francisco currently sits as a touchdown favorite, and it should be a good game. Now, one big variable in this game is the health of Deebo Samuel, who I think all the X-rays came back negative, but I think it's safe to say he's going to be impaired in some way. And looking earlier in the season when San Francisco's kind of had a dip in their play, it did coincide with injuries. Samuel was injured, but I think the other thing as well was Trent Williams was also injured at the same time. He's one of the best offensive linemen in the league, and so this time out, it's just Debo Samuel that's injured, and it's a big loss just because their offense is more dynamic and a little bit more unpredictable. I mean, when you have more tools in the tool chest, and your tool you're talking about is a Swiss Army knife called Debo Samuel, it just gives you so many more options. It's just so hard to scheme for a player like that. And the data shows it. The numbers show it. Like when he's in the lineup and when he's out of the lineup, like they're much more successful when he's in the lineup. Detroit, I mean, it's a great story with Detroit. Dan Campbell, they was a great game last week against Tampa Bay. Give Tampa Bay credit. They hung in there. And Detroit's pulled out two close games. Detroit just I like Detroit because they know how to win. Um, they can play a close defensive game and then they can play a shootout type of game. So they're kind of versatile, and they've taken on the personality of their coach, who's a never give up kind of guy. So Detroit is a very dangerous opponent, and I know a lot of pundits are, depending on the health of Debo Samuel, there's a lot of people going to ride Detroit on this one.
Yeah.
But I will say that, having said all that, and as much as I grew up a Barry Sanders fan, I had an opportunity to watch a game in Detroit when I was a very young man and see Barry Sanders play in person, and he was always my favorite running back growing up. Besides all that, I'm going to back San Fran to win this game. And the reason why is just, yeah, you take Debo Samuel out of the lineup, but you still have Christian McCaffrey. You still have George Kittle. You still have Brendan Ayuk. And, last year they up until Brock Purdy got injured, they were right there with the Eagles. So you got Brock Purdy going to back-to-back conference finals, and he looks relatively healthy. And I don't think you're asking him to win the game and put it on his arm. I think Shanahan will find a way, to use McCaffrey and those other weapons I spoke of to just kind of outlast Detroit. Well, I think it's going to be a close game. Yeah, I'm not sure. San Fran would cover that spread. I think it stays within a touchdown. But I just like San Fran to edge them out and make their way to the Super Bowl. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting game, and you mentioned the injury to Samuel, because of the role he plays in their offense, right? He's such a versatile part of their offense. They can put him anywhere, put him at running back, and move him around a receiver. It doesn't matter where he plays. He just can make an impact, and he's a good safety blanket for Brock Purdy. But you're right, they do have McCaffrey. I think it does help them that Samuel's probably, it says questionable. He's probably hasn't practiced all week and probably very limited in practice. So it gives them more opportunities to play without him in practice so they can prepare for it. Whereas once he got injured last week, they couldn't really, prepare for that. During the game, adjusting the fly is hard. The thing with San Francisco, and I look at it this way, San Francisco has many ways to win this game. They can win a track meet if it becomes that, or they can win it in a grind them out fair. I'm not so sure Detroit has that many ways. to me, I look at this game as Detroit needing it to make it a track meet. They have a great receiver in Amar St. Brown. He's been fantastic this year. I know he was good and he's been coming on the last few years, but this year he really established himself as like an all pro. And so I am with you on, I think San Fran's going to be able to win just because I think they'll have enough of preparation without Samuel to leverage everything else. But if he doesn't play, or even if he plays, he's going to be limited. But if he doesn't play, I think Detroit's got a real shot to win this game. Now, granted, they've never made it to their Super Bowl, and that factors in historically, this is a time that they could actually make Super Bowl. They have a coach who, for whatever reason, he's not. I wouldn't say he's the greatest X&O guy. I wouldn't say he's the greatest defensive mind or offensive mind, but he is one of those guys that builds a culture in the team, and he's done a really great job with Detroit building that culture. And the players believe and trust in him, and you never know what he's going to do. So he's going to have his team fired up, ready to play. I don't think the stage is going to be too big for them. And Jared Goff has been to Super Bowl, so he's a guy that knows what it takes to be there. Whereas Brock Purdy, last year was his first year, and his second year, he's making back-to-back conference championships. But I think the 49ers have been on a mission this year, ever since they lost that game to Philadelphia to the Super Bowl. They did hit a rough spot in the middle of the season, and that was again related to injuries. Right, they had a lot of injuries in the middle of the season. They had the bye week. They got themselves right, and then they just took it out. And the only time they lost the rest of the season was against Baltimore, who they might be facing in the Super Bowl if everything holds the pattern. But I like San Francisco. If it's close, it has. That's because Detroit's made it the game they wanted to make it. Like I said, I think San Francisco has more weapons, more ways to win this game versus Detroit. I think they have to play a track meet. They got to make it an up tempo game, high scoring. Their offense can score with anybody. Their defense is a little suspect, very strong up front on the line, but the back end of their front seven is not the best, and their secondary can be had a little bit. So I'm going to lean to San Francisco also because I think they can pressure Goff, and I think when you pressure him, he tends to turn the ball over. So I like them in that matchup. I like the ability for San Fran to pressure. But like I said, if Detroit makes it a track meet type of game, they have a chance to win. If it's more of a slow down, normal tempo, grind them out game, I think San Francisco has the edge there. And I'll take the 49ers. I'll take the 49ers by 10. I want to say they're going to win it by 10.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we're both picking Baltimore to come out of the AFC, and we're both picking San Francisco to come out of the NFC. And if that holds, I mean, we're in for a real treat this weekend. And if our picks hold, we're in for a real treat for the Super Bowl because it'll be. I can't recall last time we had 1 seed versus 1 seed, but that's the collision course that that we're calling. So, actually, with these 4 teams, like let's be honest, we would be in for a pretty good Super Bowl matchup, no matter which of these 4 teams came out of it. So
yeah, I mean, let's not forget game 1 of this season. Detroit played Kansas City and beat them, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
right. So Detroit may not surprise. Now, grant you, I don't think Kansas City's offense is as explosive as San Fran is. Obviously, if Samuel's out, that helps Detroit a lot, or how limited he is. But yeah, I mean, Detroit is not afraid to play a top level team as beating things. But I just think San Francisco's just got too many ways to win. But strange things happen, right? And you're right. The one seeds. I don't recall the last time. I think San Francisco. Philadelphia's one seed last year. Last year probably it was last year because KC won at home and Philadelphia won at home. So last year the 2-1 seeds played against each other, right? At the end, but this is interesting because Detroit's a fresh team, right? They're a new team. Baltimore's won it in the last 10 years. John Harbaugh has beaten has one of the want to say if it's not 10 years, the last 15 years, Baltimore's at least won it. 2024. Not gonna remember how time flies.
Yeah.
2010 seems like just yesterday, and it's 2024, almost 2025 now. So, but time flies. It's going to be it'll be an epic Super Bowl if that's the case. Baltimore and San Francisco, a repeat of the Harbaugh Bowl many moons ago, not too long ago.
That's right. Yeah, way different quarterbacks back then too, right? That was Kaepernick against Joe Flacco.
Yeah. So it's very interesting, and interesting that I said that because as we discussed prior to going on the air, the announcement that Jim Harbaugh was going to San Diego,
L.A.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right, L.A.
Yeah, L.A. Yeah.
I still want to call him San Diego.
Yeah. Sometimes I still call them San Diego, but will be an interesting year next year. Well, we're in for a treat this week, so let's see how the games play out, and looking forward to the games this week. And we will be back with you next week to preview the Super Bowl. So thanks again, DDawg, for breaking it down with me and enjoying your company. So you take care.
Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, no problem. We will talk to you real soon. Thanks, everyone.